Lochran back again with OddsShopper, closing out week 16 in the NFL. My voice, it's shot. I don't know what happened. I woke up Saturday morning. There's been a lot of football lately. Woke up Saturday morning. Nothing was there. It's starting to return a little bit, but appreciate you guys bearing with me. Hopefully you all had a fantastic Christmas. Happy holidays, and got everything you were looking for, especially some wins and a bankroll boost heading into Monday Night Football. We got a good one. It doesn't look like it, but I think this will be a good one. Colts at home hosting the Chargers, who can get into the playoffs this week with a victory. But we all know the Chargers' late season struggles over the years. I'm not putting anything past them to find a way to squander this opportunity. I also have a prop that I absolutely love. We'll get to that later in the video. So hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. I try and read and respond to all of those. And before we get into this, don't be an insane person. It's the holiday season, right? Take advantage of free money, especially when it only takes you a minute to sign up, like DraftKings, where you take $5, turn it into $150, and forget you ever had to take the 1 minute, 90 seconds to do so. All you do, use the link in the description or the chat. $5, not 10, not 100, $5. Deposit that, put it on any money line you want. And when that money line wins, I say when for a reason, not if. When that money line wins, you got $150 that you didn't have yesterday. Be a sane person. Someone that says, oh, it's the holiday seasons. I'm older now. I don't get a lot of free stuff. Why don't I get free stuff anymore? Or gifts. That's how I felt. I honestly feel I get salty sometimes. I get free money though. You get free money here. $150 on $5. This is what you do when you go to place your bets tonight, okay? When you go to place everything for Monday Night Football, this prop I got and all the other fun stuff that we're going to talk about in this video, bet Texas Tech in college basketball, minus 20,000 against South Carolina, or Texas against Texas A&M, minus 20,000. Lock it in, forget about it. When you sign up using that link, put $5 down, collect your $150, and let's win some money in NFL. All right, first up, we'll hit the side here, total, then a prop, as we always do. The obvious play here, right, at like first glance, you go Chargers. They get a win here, they're in, and everything is golden. We know this Chargers team, though. We know them all too well. We also know this Colts team before and after Jeff Saturday. They're 4-point dogs, all right? Now, this is an odd one because the total was at 4, the line was at 4, at 3.5 in some spots, moved up to 5 when Nick Foles was announced, and then there's been some buyback. It's back to 4, 3.5 in some spots, as a matter of fact. But the Colts, yes, imploded last Saturday. Coughed up 36 unanswered points to be on the wrong side of the biggest comeback in NFL history. And let's not forget about the Dallas game before the bye, where the Cowboys scored 33 points in a game that was a 2-point game in the fourth quarter. 33 unanswered points. But the funny thing is, they still covered last week. They still covered. And we were good. We were on the Colts. They still covered. All right, disgusting game, but they still cover. And the Chargers just surely are not a team that I feel confident in ever, especially towards the end of the season when they can clinch the playoffs with a win tonight on the road. And how about this too? The Chargers are an 8-6.
Yeah, this is the start for me, where Justin Herbert undoes the Charger bad luck legacy.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to tell myself. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Stokastic NFL DFS Monday Night Football live before lock, presented by No House Advantage. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating. Hope you had a wonderful one, and then you're settling back into the NFL streets because we have got the Showdown Shaman, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Neil Orfield. Follow him at PlayerQDFS. Happy to do these shows with you every Monday, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I love doing these shows. These evening shows are always, it's a better time for me. I do some morning shows, and I'm like, it's always fun. I get to do shows with Lafayette. I love those shows too, but being able to do a show when I'm a little bit more alive, as I get more energy throughout the day. So I love doing these evening shows, and I love breaking down Showdown. This should be a fun Showdown slate. I think this is a really interesting slate. Some players who are going to be lower owned than they probably should be, and of course, as we were talking about before the stream started, a lot riding on this best ball season long. This is pretty fun, seeing who can be sent to the championship next week.
Dude, I know. I'll admit it. I'm in my best ball tournament streets. I'm dead. I'm pretty much dead. But we were talking before. Maybe you'll be able to pull your biases out of this, because I know you definitely have a few lineups here on both Underdog and DraftKings, some of the main tournaments we had over the summer. You definitely have some live plays. I hope you guys have some live plays in the best ball streets. But of course, we'll be breaking this one down from a showdown perspective, all the platforms you want to play. And, we're starting off pretty strong today, Neil. We got a couple hundred people hanging out right as we start today. Already up at 59 likes, but I know this group. Once you hit that 600 mark, we can get this up to, first of all, 1,000 viewers, easy. We can fly by that, but we can also get up to 150. Do you think 200 likes is capable tonight? Do you think we can do that?
I think so. I have a lot of confidence in our viewers. They're capable. They want to give us that like, so I think we can get over 200 for sure.
I see it starting to climb. I appreciate you all. I hope you all had a wonderful time with family, friends, whoever you like to spend the holiday. Oh, you know what? If you like to spend the holidays alone, drinking your favorite drink, no judgments there. We just hope you had the best time. And now it's time to dig in. And as I was kind of saying, right as the mics went hot today, Neil, I think this is the moment for Justin Fields, with a playoff spot available to them a couple weeks before the season ends, in a wacky AFC, where that stink, the Chargers stank, starts to finally remove itself. Justin Herbert is that good of a quarterback. Close the door. Get this team in the playoffs in a way that you couldn't get over the hump last year. Am I crazy to say, this is the narrative I want to run with tonight in this Chargers-Colts game? The Chargers are clearly the better team.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I would like to see, it's a fun team too. I like this Chargers team. I hope they make the playoffs, just because I enjoy watching this team. It's just such a great offense. Mediocre defense makes for great fantasy games. So I'm with you. I hope they can get to the playoffs.
Yeah, look, this team, what was it? They had that moment where they could tie the Raiders last year, and that they would both get into the playoffs. It ultimately didn't happen. The Raiders fall on their face in the first round, of course. All right, let's break this one down from a range of outcomes perspective. We got a pretty reasonable 44.5 point total. Chargers implied total is 24, Colts 20.5. Look, I don't think this is going to be a barn burner, but compared to the horrible weather games we had over the course of this weekend, and the fact that, at least from the Chargers side, we know there's offensive talent, there is shootout potential here in this matchup.
I'm excited. Yeah, you never know. Maybe BDN is exactly what the Colts need here to up their game a little bit. So I like it. The Chargers, always a fun offense. The Colts kind of a middling defense, and I think that the Colts, Matt Ryan is maybe not what he once was. Maybe was holding them back a little bit. So I'm excited about the QB change. Excited to see what maybe the Colts can do here.
Did I say Justin Fields? Did I already?
You did
I say
Justin
Fields instead of Justin Herbert?
Yeah.
All right, that's one, guys. Yeah, believe it or not, I know that Justin Herbert and not Justin Fields is on this slate. Yeah, okay. We're gonna let that pass. Maybe you can be in the holiday spirit and forgive me there. Look, the Chargers, despite having the higher implied total, despite us feeling like they should win this game, despite us feeling that Justin Herbert is clearly the better quarterback than Nick Foles on paper, they definitely have some holes, particularly on the run defense side. They are 25th in Football Outsiders DVOA, 31st in yards allowed per carry. They're a little bit better against the pass. But what do you think about this Chargers defense possibly giving up offense to this now very injured Indianapolis offense?
Yeah, it's obviously not the best team should be playing. This offense doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, this Colts offense, but the Chargers kind of a middling defense. And of course, the Colts also missing Jonathan Taylor. But I still think they have some weapons. I think Michael Pittman is a very good wide receiver. Maybe Zach Moss and Deion Jackson are good enough to get it done. We saw Jelani Woods have that breakout game a few weeks back when Kylan Granson was out. Now we got Granson out again. I think that they might be able to move. I think that they've got enough talent to potentially do some damage against this Chargers defense. So it could be a good game.
Absolutely. I just saw my eye. If you saw my eyes bug out of my head, that's because we just got some killer super chats. Guys, this is what the holidays are all about. First of all, the likes are just completely going off right now. We're already over 150. 250 is extremely viable. I think we get to 300, but look at these super chats. Taylor and Short, oh my gosh, Short Gamer TV with the 50 burger. And Taylor with the 10. Guys, thank you so much. Thank you to all the Stokastic crew. And you see next to Taylor and Short Gamer TV's name there over on YouTube, they got the cool little name tags letting you know that they are part of the Stokastic community over on YouTube. Taylor just giving us a shout out, Neil. Thanks for your time and insight tonight, Matt and Neil. Good luck. We appreciate you, Taylor, and good luck to you as well. And then Short Gamer TV. $50, man. That's so awesome. Thank you. Shout out to all the tools for helping me win 100K on Saturday Night Football. Dude, this is what it's all about. So happy for you, Short Gamer TV. Make sure you tag Stokastic HOF on Twitter so you can get that free month if you're taking down first or second in a field of 3,000 or more. And look at our buddy Jorge. Now it's starting to really feel like that Christmas spirit. Yeah, it's in 364 days. I get it. But Jorge, making it rain, 20 memberships gifted. This is a lot of fun, man. All right, we got to get into the actual players here, the position by position breakdown. But the question I'm going to ask you after this one. You see what I did? Any actives or inactives that changed the way that you're planning on building rosters today? I don't really see much here. Isaiah Spiller is out for the Chargers. Storm Norton, their tackle. Sony Michel is inactive. Kylan Granson inactive for the Colts. Maybe that's the only thing that's changing your opinion. We're obviously going to break down the quarterback change when we get to talking about the Colts.
Yeah, I think these were largely expected. So like as far as changes from this morning, Isaiah Spiller I thought might play, but I don't know that it affects all that much. He wasn't somebody I was really planning on playing anybody. Sony Michel being out, I think was kind of expected. Kylan Granson, it's not new news. We talked about it. I touched on it briefly, but I think that's really good for Jelani Woods and Mo Alley Cox. We know that they're going to be more involved with Kylan Granson out. As I said, just a couple weeks ago, we saw that Jelani Woods breakout game. And then of course, Kylan Granson comes back and they decide we're not going to use him anymore for some reason. So we could see Jelani Woods, back in the form that he showed where he had like 8 catches for 98 yards, something crazy like that a few weeks ago. So that's exciting, but I think it was expected. We've known that for a couple of days.
And it's still, let's put it in context. Like we're still going to take chances in tournaments, like the tournaments you're trying to take down, Neil, but
yep.
Whenever you have a quarterback change and you have inactives and you have a tight end position that isn't necessarily one that the team leans on every single game, this is a large amount of uncertainty, a lot of things you have to get right all at once. But that's what you got to do to be unique in a one-game slate. Now the question I always ask you, with the total sitting at 44.5, a little bit down from where it started the day at, what are the chances this game shoots out, meaning it goes to 52 total points between these teams or more? Just off the top of your head, give me a probability.
Yeah, it's tough after seeing how bad the Chargers were last week. That was such a letdown in what should have been a great spot for them. I still think that there's, maybe a 24% chance. Like I think the Chargers still are supercharged. I think that they've got a chance to put up a big number. And the Colts, as I said, I think that we could see Nick Foles come in and kind of energize this offense. Sometimes you see a change at quarterback really change things for the positive. And I think that could be the case here with Nick Foles coming in. So yeah, maybe 24% chance. And
it is sort of a league average team that Foles is facing. So if you just wanted to say like, what does Foles look like at home against a league average D? This is a great sample to give him. And 20.5 implied points for the Colts is not unreasonable. It's just one of those things where I think the range of outcomes is really high. Like I think 27.5 is as likely as 12.5 for this team. And we didn't talk about it a lot, but the Colts defense has also completely floundered, giving up just absolutely huge halves and games to teams like the Cowboys. And of course, that epic collapse last week. It's really hard to trust the Colts D. I'm sure no one is going to want to play them, which we'll get to at the end, but it does make for an interesting time if you want to play the Colts defense or kickers today. Anything else from a game environment you want to talk about before we get to the actual position by position breakdown today?
No, let's jump into it.
Let's do it. Before we do, though, guys, we got to talk to you about an awesome offer from BetMGM. Still here as we round the corner into 2023, but I do not know how long we will be giving away yes, you heard me, 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up for BetMGM and make a bet. Now, it has to settle. You have to click the link in the video description below so we can track that. And then this is the important part. It can't be a futures bet. It has to settle before we can give you that subscription to Stokastic Plus Platinum. But this isn't just NFL tools. This is NBA, NHL, every single esports package we've got. This is everything for 2 months, an unbelievable value for just one $10 bet. And on top of that, BetMGM is offering a risk-free bet up to $1,000 when you sign up. So you could start with the biggest underdog. You could bet the Colts tonight. And even if the Colts lose, you would get that money back in your account as betting credits, again, up to $1,000. All you need to get the Stokastic Plus Platinum is $10 by clicking the link in the video description below. But it truly is a great way to get into the action, see what's up. Now, I know it's not available for everyone in all states, so I definitely have you covered later in the show with another offer, another way to get free Stokastic Plus membership on the NFL side. But I think this is truly one of the best offers we've had with any single platform. Get into the action with BetMGM today. All right, the LA Chargers. I said it up top. Justin Herbert has a chance to change the narrative, change the way we feel about this Chargers team by closing the door, clinching a wild card or better spot. What do you think about playing Justin Herbert tonight? And then it's not a matter of, are you playing Justin Herbert? It's what are you doing with him? What does he look like in the tools? And how are you handling him in tournaments? Like, how are you dealing with stacks and things like that?
Yeah, so I think I'm going to have a lot of Justin Herbert. I'll start there. He is the highest projected player on the slate, I believe. As I was running crunches earlier, if I didn't change his projection at all, I would just get to 100% Justin Herbert in my lineups. He projects that well. He's a great play. And you look at our tools, he actually looks under-owned in our single game tool, under-owned in the captain spot where he's projected for 15.1% ownership, 17.5% chance to be an optimal. Under-owned in the util, he's projected for 53.6% ownership, 59.2% chance to be an optimal. So I'm happy to be above the field on Justin Herbert. He's just a great football player, should put up a lot of fantasy points. The question of what I'm doing as far as correlations go. So Justin Herbert does have some rushing upside. He hasn't really shown it as much this year. He's been rushing for just 10 yards per game, something like that. I don't think he has a single rushing touchdown on the year, but he had 8 rushing touchdowns in his first 2 seasons in the NFL. Clearly has that upside. So I think that you'd be okay to play Justin Herbert in the captain spot with just one pass catcher in the flex. It's still my preference to play him with multiple because, again, his rushing hasn't been as good this year as it was the past couple of years. And in the flex, I still think I'm requiring at least one pass catcher when I've got Justin Herbert in the flex. You could, in a 150 sets, not require it because he does have that rushing spike upside, and he's got some expensive pass catching options. So say he throws a touchdown each to Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen at their price tags. If they don't do much else, it's possible for Herbert to be optimal in the flex without any pass catchers, but it's still pretty unlikely. So I'm requiring at least one pass catcher in every lineup with Justin Herbert, and then I'm giving boosts when I have him in the captain spot to get to preferably multiple. So that's kind of my breakdown of Justin Herbert. I like him everywhere, and I like to pair him with at least one pass catcher.
I think that makes sense. You mentioned it right off the top that he does have theoretical rushing touchdown upside. But look, you got to call it like you see it. You haven't seen a single rushing touchdown this year. The highest rushing total he's had in a game this year is 38 yards. And the last 3 weeks, he hasn't topped 8 yards. I'm not saying Justin Herbert isn't a good athlete. I'm just saying they've deprioritized that within the offense. They'd rather have him chucking the ball over the field. He's number 2 in total pass attempts. They're number 2 in pass plays per game. He's number 6 in total air yards. And that you would expect his expected fantasy points to be extremely high. And in fact, they are. He's the 6th highest in expected fantasy points per game among all quarterbacks, despite not being a great rusher. Usually the rushing quarterbacks top that stat. Now, we haven't seen the same efficiency levels in comparing his actual fantasy points scored compared to expectation. And the efficiency numbers are down in the advanced metrics, 20th in adjusted yards per attempt, 15th in QBR. It's okay for Justin Herbert. I think he's better if you just watch the film. But look, I still think when you have a player who in our tools is optimal either in the flex or at the captain spot, 75% of the time, it just shows you that the level of talent and the median projection is at a different level than everyone else on the entire slate.
Yeah, exactly right. We know that he usually will put up a good number of fantasy points. We kind of know who Justin Herbert is. Obviously, he's coming off a pretty bad game last time out, but in general, he's going to throw more touchdowns than interceptions, especially in this matchup with the Colts. It's not a scary matchup. So I like Justin Herbert quite a bit. And as I said, I generally prefer pairing with a pass catcher. And as you probably know, if you're watching the show, Austin Eckler certainly works as a pass catcher that you can pair with Justin Herbert because he can sometimes get 10, 12 targets in a game.
Glad you mentioned that. Absolutely. And while we're talking about the running backs, I know we're going to jump over to Indy, but I want to say thank you to Liker for a $5 super chat. Obviously doesn't have the pass catching upside as Eckler, but Zach Moss on the other side, a captain, is what he's worried about. We're going to a deep dive on the Indy running backs in a little bit here. But he mentions that Moss certainly seemed to touch the ball a lot last week. Do you think he's a viable captain tonight?
Absolutely, Moss is a viable captain. Given, his workload last week and the price tag, he's just 7,000. Deion Jackson more expensive and still getting a lot of ownership. So Deion Jackson got, he's more expensive and he had many fewer opportunities last week than Zach Moss. Of course, that's a 1 week sample size. I don't know if that's going to hold that kind of ratio of opportunities there, but based on last week, at least Zach Moss had like 24 carries and a number of routes run as well. He's a capable pass catcher. We've seen him get like 8 or 10 targets in a game already this year. I don't think it was when he was on the Colts. I think it was when he was on the Bills, but we know that he's capable of having a number of targets in a game. So yeah, I think Zach Moss certainly a viable captain. We have him projected for 7.6% captain ownership, 7.1% chance to be an optimal. So slight negative leverage, but honestly, it's fairly neutral there. And I like the cost savings there.
Yeah. And the picture on Adam's wall, I realize that you also have an Indy running back super chat as well. We will get to you, I promise you, but we're going to get it on the other side. Just finishing up the conversation about Moss, who's expected to get the most workload in the backfield on the other side. We got him in our projected stats at over 17 total opportunities. That's targets plus rushes today. That makes him absolutely viable at the captain spot. Let's talk about Austin Eckler, the most premier running back. You mentioned him, that you could stack him with Justin Herbert because he's obviously a great pass catching weapon as well. What's he looking like in the tools today? How are you utilizing him? And are you going to be with, above, or below the field?
Yeah, good question. I'm going to have a lot of Austin Eckler. He doesn't look great in the, he looks fine in this. He looks like he's over-owned in the captain spot. Again, that's probably because of that price tag. He's the most expensive player on the slate. We have him projected for 14% ownership in the captain spot, optimal 8% of the time. So negative leverage on Austin Eckler in the captain spot. Looks neutral in the util, 41% ownership, 41% chance of being optimal. So my preference would be to play him in the util, but especially on DraftKings, we know that Austin Eckler has the upside to have, again, like he's had like 12 targets in a game. He's just so involved in the passing game that on a site like DraftKings, where it is full PPR, you definitely can rack up points in a hurry without even scoring a touchdown. And then we know Austin Eckler has that touchdown upside. So yeah, I like Austin Eckler quite a bit. It was interesting as I was running my FanDuel crunches earlier, because of his price tag and his projection, I got like none on my first crunch of Austin Eckler. Just like based on his just raw projection, I got virtually zero Austin Eckler. So that I would say you need to be cautious of that on FanDuel, because you probably don't want zero Austin Eckler. You know that he's capable of putting up 30 fantasy points in a game, and it could be completely necessary. So if you're using Fantasy Cruncher on FanDuel, be wary of that possibility of getting 0 Austin Eckler, make sure that you boost his projection at least enough to get him in some of your lineups. I mean, I would. I guess you don't need to. You could fade him if you want to, but generally Austin Eckler is a guy that I think you're going to want to play at least some of, even if you want to be under the field on FanDuel. Yeah, certainly viable. So I prefer him in the flex, but I think he's a viable captain as well, despite the price tag. I will say, when you are leaving salary on the table, the way that I like to, as a way to get unique, makes it pretty difficult to play a guy like Austin Eckler in the captain spot, just given how expensive he gets on DraftKings when you have him in the captain spot. But there are a number of cheap guys that I like on this slate too, so it is still possible.
Yeah, we're going to get to those Neil's nobodies for sure. And anytime we get to a position where you can shout it out, absolutely do that. But I think that's the right line of thinking. Like, obviously, if you're playing something like 5 to 20 lineups, and if you want to say, I'm getting contrarian by following the tools, going under the field and way under the field, playing almost no Austin Eckler, it's viable. But let's remember, the opportunity value for a player like Eckler is as good as anyone on the slate. When you look at all the targets, air yards, rushes that he gets, where he gets those opportunities on the field, no one really looks better at the Chargers, on the Chargers team. It's just the salary you have to pay is a little exorbitant.
Yep.
I think it's still a rational expected ownership. It's not so over the field. It just clearly presents a pathway where fading Eckler is viable in large field tournaments. Right. Is that kind of how you're seeing it? And also mention if you're playing any of these other running backs. You got Joshua Kelly at 5,200, not a very appetizing price. Anybody else?
Other running backs on the Chargers. Yeah, I mean, Joshua Kelly, that it does make it tough. The one thing that I will say about Joshua Kelly is he's getting fairly low ownership. I mean, it's not even that low. Like, he's up to 10% ownership now. Not my favorite play on the slate. As I was looking at players who come in at under 10% ownership, I included him as a player that you can consider just as a contrarian option. He did have 10 carries in the last game. He saw a couple targets, so was involved a little bit. And then, of course, you've got the added outs of injury to Eckler or garbage time. Maybe Joshua Kelly becomes a little bit more involved, but man, at 5,200, it's like he could have those opportunities and still not pay it off potentially. So not my favorite play on the slate, but at 5,200 at 10% ownership, he's somebody I might want in my player pool. But I don't even know that you need to. I think there are probably better options that are still going to be relatively low owned.
Okay, now let's bounce it back to the picture on Adam's wall super chat from a little bit ago. So, would you rather take a dart throw on a player like Kelly, or would you rather go on the other side at the running back position and play a player like Jordan Wilkins, whose salary is 200, but a projection is under 1.5? Which of those, dare I say, Neil's nobodies, patent pending, would those be, considering their salary and expectation? Do you have a preference for either?
I mean, Jordan Wilkins, I don't know is even going to be in the game. What did he play? He's not somebody that I even included in my article. So I did write up Joshua Kelly as a nobody that you could consider. I did not write up Jordan Wilkins, so I'm inclined to say Joshua Kelly, but let me double check on Jordan Wilkins, because there is a little bit more volatility in that situation, which kind of gives me pause. Like, they've been using Deion Jackson and they've been using Zach Moss, but it wouldn't be that shocking to see Jordan Wilkins come in and have a role. He hasn't played since week 10 though. He just, so far this year, he's had 6 total carries. He played weeks 9 and week 10 at 6 carries. He's run 13 routes, just has not been very involved. Like, there is some volatility in the situation because maybe they didn't like what they saw out of Deion Jackson and Zach Moss, but I think they did. I think that they did well enough. So I don't expect Jordan Wilkins to be involved. He's a play that you could consider in a large field GPP just because it is a volatile situation. We have a 1-game sample size without Jonathan Taylor. Maybe they want to bring in a new running back, but I kind of doubt it. So I think that my answer is Joshua Kelly, but I can see the merit to playing Wilkins just because it's a volatile situation with this being the second game without Jonathan Taylor. You never know if a team didn't like what they saw and wants to switch things up.
I like players like Wilkins on 1-game slates where that 200 price tag and even the chance of him getting 1 or even less fantasy points helps me get to some sort of core 4 or even more players that are so chalky and so good that I want all of them, and I need to find some other way to be unique, even if it means getting a 0 at one of these spots. I realize that core would have to be the nuts. It would have to be perfect, but we've seen those things happen. I don't know if that's the kind of slate this is kind of turning out to be. Certainly a viable way to play things. Let's move on to the wide receiver position, and we can group tight ends in there since they're not a huge part of this Chargers offense. Like Liker with another super chat here. Thanks, man. Josh Palmer right off the bat. Is he secretly Herbert's favorite target?
I don't know. I'd have to talk to Justin Herbert about that. I don't have Justin Herbert's phone number apparently.
Get us the inside info, man.
I don't believe he is secretly Justin Herbert's favorite target. I think that, Justin Herbert, like any sane quarterback, probably prefers Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Do you have a different answer? I mean, do you think that Josh Palmer is more do you think Justin Herbert likes him better than I realize?
No. I think Keenan Allen is still his favorite, but I'm going to be, I'm going to be numbers based here. I'm going to look at percentage of targets and percentage of team air yards. And
so I'm pulling up right now. Yeah.
And Keenan Allen's still getting 23% of this team's total passing offense. Josh Palmer's there at 18, 19, respectable, highly respectable. He's getting more air yards, obviously, than Austin Eckler, to the point where his value within the passing offense might actually put him above Eckler. We got Williams in there. I hate to use the mouths to feed cliche, but it's hard to say that Palmer is definitively Herbert's favorite. Definitely viable. Let's just use that as to springboard our way into this wide receiver position. We've got really good star power here. What are you doing with Allen? What are you doing with Williams? How are you dealing with these two stars tonight?
Yeah, so I'll just start with I looked into it a little bit more just to see if he's getting more targets and I'm missing it. But no, just looking at the past couple weeks where we've had both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams available. Josh Palmer's had 11 targets. Keenan Allen's had 23 targets. Mike Williams has had 14 targets. So I don't believe Josh Palmer is secretly Justin Herbert's favorite weapon to answer that question. I didn't even look up. Austin Eckler might be ahead of him as well in that time frame. As far as the receivers, I mean, obviously all of these guys very playable. Keenan Allen is, especially on DraftKings, he's just a PPR monster. Looks like he's going a little bit under-owned in the util. We've got him about neutral in the captain spot, projected for 10.5% captain ownership, 10.1% chance to be an optimal, projected for 39.5% util ownership, 42.7% chance to be an optimal. So a little bit of positive leverage on Keenan Allen. The nice thing about Allen relative to Herbert, Eckler, is that he's just cheaper than those guys. He's only 9,800, which makes it a little bit easier to play Allen in the captain spot and fit in better players around him. I like Keenan Allen quite a bit. Mike Williams looks like we've got him coming in a little bit lower owned, but also lower odds of being optimal. I still like Mike. I mean, Mike Williams is just one of those guys who's a little bit volatile, but we know that he has that big play upside where he can put up fantasy points really quickly. Projected for 8.5% captain ownership, 7.6% chance to be an optimal. So slight negative leverage on Williams there. And then the util basically exactly neutral, 32% ownership, 32% chance of being optimal. I don't really see it any differently. Like, I don't feel the need to force in Williams. I think that he clearly has that upside. He's also, I'd say Mike Williams is much more of a boom bust play than Keenan Allen. Would you agree with that? Like, Keenan Allen is the safer. He's got that PPR floor more than Mike Williams. But Mike Williams, I think, has just as much boom upside, at least, as Keenan Allen, because he can have, 120 yards and 2 touchdowns wouldn't be shocking for Mike Williams either. So I would say Keenan Allen, the safer of the two. Mike Williams, I would say, has pretty comparable ceiling. Would you agree with that statement?
I think Mike Williams, if you're just take the defenses out of it for a second, I think Mike Williams has a higher ceiling than Keenan Allen on most days. Just look at the game logs. It's just, you need so much volume from a player like Keenan Allen to really hit a true ceiling. It's just scary when you're leaning into volatility, because Mike Williams could easily put up a 4 or a 5-point game as much as he could put up a 25-point game.
Yep.
But if you just look at the chances of putting up 25 points based on the way they play, I think you could argue that Mike Williams has a better chance of getting there. I would say that I'm not going to play it this way tonight with Williams. I think he's in a bad matchup. The adjusted fantasy points allowed, one of the main stats I look for a wide receiver matchups. It looks like Indy is league average, but there are some others that are saying Stephon Gilmore is still pretty up there in terms of ability to shut down a wide receiver like Williams. I'm not saying it's a full fade situation, but I do think that there is risk of ruin. That said, if you're trying to take down tournaments like Neil is trying to take down, you're searching for that 25, 30 point upside. I still think it's there for a player like Joshua Palmer. The salary isn't unreasonable. 6,400 for a player like Palmer, who has way more expected fantasy points compared to a backup running back in this offense. I'm sure you like him. And then what about anyone below him, like a DeAndre Carter or anyone else you're looking at in the wide receiver core for the Chargers?
Yeah, so Josh Palmer, I mean, even though I don't think he's Justin Herbert's favorite receiving option, he still has got 11 targets in these past 2 games with everybody healthy. He's certainly a guy who can put up a big score. So I do like Josh Palmer a bit, despite the return of the alphas in the receiving core. Looks fine in the tools as well. Project for 3.5% captain ownership, 3.8% chance to be an optimal. So, some positive leverage on Palmer. He's only 6,400. So some nice price savings there for a guy who still has, can hit a ceiling here, I think. Then 23% project ownership in util, 23% chance to be an optimal. He looks like the field is playing Josh Palmer about how much the field should be playing Josh Palmer. Yeah, that's about how much I'd want to have of Josh Palmer as well. Not somebody I'm taking a huge stand on. The only other receiver that I would consider is DeAndre Carter. He is clearly he's the wide receiver 4 here. He's still been somewhat involved in the offense. He's had I shouldn't even say he's had some opportunities with everybody healthy, not a ton. So in the past 2 games, he's had 4 total targets. He's had 1 target in the red zone. Not extremely involved in the offense when everybody's healthy. But I will say, both Keenan Allen and Mike Williams have some history of getting hurt mid-game. And if they do, then DeAndre Carter, it's an out for DeAndre Carter. So he's got these, kind of aging receivers ahead of him who have some injury history. Maybe there's a little extra merit. So even if they both do play the whole game, as I said, he's had 4 targets with 1 red zone target in the past 2 weeks with everybody healthy. And then he does have that additional out of potential injury to somebody ahead of him. I think he's clearly the next in line. And then, of course, garbage time as well. So I think there's merit to playing DeAndre Carter in a large field GPP. You just have to understand that most of the time, he's not going to have many opportunities.
I guess you could play like straight wide receiver handcuffs, like I feel like DeAndre Carter is, but it would be nicer if he were like 400, not 2,400, if that were the case. I almost feel like I'd rather take a chance on a straight, backup tight end, because they will be 400. Let's move to the tight end. Like Gerald Everett in our tools right now, just on a points per dollar play, he's going to look better than a player like Joshua Palmer. He's 4,800 on DraftKings, and his median projection is within half a fantasy point of Palmer. The upside for Palmer, just because of the type of player he is, it's probably a little higher, but Everett looks good in our tools.
Yeah, I love Gerald Everett. I feel like I've loved Gerald Everett so many times, and he generally lets me down. Like, I think that he's a talented tight end, and somehow he just rarely does it. But the tools love him once again, so I'm glad to see that at least my mind is the same as the tools here. Gerald Everett projected for 3.8% captain ownership with a 4.7% chance to be an optimal, 22.9% util ownership with a 26.1% chance to be an optimal. Yeah, I like Gerald Everett quite a bit. The price is right. He's one of the better point per dollar plays on the slate. He's seen 24 targets over the past 4 games. He's seen 5 red zone targets over the past 4 games. So he's somebody who will have opportunities. He hasn't really done it that much recently, but certainly can spike an upside. So I like Gerald Everett quite a bit at 4,800.
I was surprised. That was my big surprise, to see how high his median projection is. But look, we've been talking about favorite targets, security blankets. They do use the tight end in the red zone. Everett definitely looks appealing. Close out this Chargers receiving core, or any other final words you have for this Chargers team. Any favorites, any players you're definitely fading? Finish out the Chargers before we move on to the Colts here.
Yeah, so I want to throw in that I do like Donald Parham here. He returned in week 15 after an extended absence. He ran routes on 22% of passing plays in that game and earned 3 targets in his first game back. I think there's some chance that he sees his workload increase, since that was just his first game back. He's only 400, and he's also a big red zone target. They like targeting Donald Parham in the red zone historically. So I do like Donald Parham as one of the better, low owned cheap guys. He's only $400. He is, again, I should caveat that Parham is, chances are more often than not, he's not putting up more than a few fantasy points. But at $400, he's, he gets one touchdown, probably pays off that price tag. And I think there's a chance that he will have more opportunities than he saw last week when he was still involved, running routes on 22% of passing plays. So I actually like Donald Parham quite a bit at 400 at relatively low ownership.
Now, I want to bounce around just a little bit because we got some super chats about this, and it's relevant at the tight end position. If you're trying to choose one of these cheapy tight ends, you mentioned Jelani Woods earlier. We've got 2 super chats about Woods. Nathan Perkins with the $5 super chat asking about Pierce or Jelani Woods, but I want to keep this to Woods for just a moment because my filler arc also left a $4.99 super chat saying he didn't really know about Woods till you mentioned him earlier, but would you captain him because it helps you get to a lot of other players? Now, Woods in our tools has about double the fantasy points expectation of a player like Donald Parham, but he's 2,800 on DraftKings versus the 400 for Parham. This is actually tough to suss out. What are you feeling about these sort of off-the-wall tight ends today? Do you have a preference for Woods or Parham just straight up?
Woods or Parham just straight up? I mean, so I think Parham is going to come in significantly lower owned. They're kind of different plays in a way, because I think Woods is at least a little bit safer. I mean, as you said, this is still like somewhat of a large field GPP play, but I think that Woods is going to have a bigger role in the offense with Kylan Granson out. We just saw how involved he could be with Kylan Granson a few weeks back when he had like 8 catches for 98 yards. I don't remember the exact stat line, something like that. So he's 2,800, should have a bigger role. I'd say that I like Woods in a vacuum better. I think that there's more of a risk of Woods getting a lot more ownership than we're expecting than there is with Donald Parham. I don't expect Donald Parham to see much more than the 5% ownership that we're projecting for. I could see Jelani Woods getting talked up through across the industry just because everybody can see, like, the last game without Kylan Granson, he did have a lot of ownership, but at 11%, which is what we're projecting him at, I do still like Jelani Woods quite a bit. So I think, I'd say that Woods is the somewhat safer option, but also likelier to have more ownership. I'd say probably in a vacuum, I like Woods better, but I like both these guys quite a bit for large field GPPs.
All right. I hope that covers it for you, because that's as thorough of an answer you're going to get about 2,800 salary tight ends who may be the second tight end on each of their team's depth chart. Couldn't have said it better myself. And guys, if you haven't gotten started at No House Advantage, I don't know what to say, because they have awesome contests, huge overlay night after night. And I've said this before on other shows, Neil, like No House Advantage and these companies, they know that they don't have to have overlay, but right now they're offering tons of contests. They've got over/under contests. The versus the house mode is fantastic, where you can up to 20x your entry fee, and you can now get up to a $100 first match deposit bonus by clicking the link in the video description below. It's the same stats, same stuff you know and love. We've got tools over at Stokastic.com to help you take down huge prizes. Actually, it's a really cool format you got over there. You obviously have the more traditional, almost like props betting side of things. That's versus the house. But these contests that they have, where you rank your stats into order of confidence, it's a really cool way to play. And again, we've got the tools over at Stokastic.com to help you take this down. Make sure you check out the link in the video description below. Use the free tools, win some free money. I know a lot of people in the Stokastic crew are finding out what NHA is all about because they're winning over there, which is what the whole goal of this is, of course. All right, let's move over to the Colts. Let's talk quarterback. Matt Ryan benched once again, and now Nick Foles is the man that Jeff Saturday turns to. I could go on a whole diatribe about Jeff Saturday, but we'll save that for another day, Neil. What can we expect out of Nick Foles? A ton of uncertainty about what this offense looks like when we go to now the third quarterback in this tumultuous Colts season.
Yeah, I'll start by saying what we cannot expect from Nick Foles, and that's a lot of running. He's just not, he's a statue out there. He does not have a history of running much at all. So he's the rare quarterback that I don't think I'm playing him at captain unless I have at least 2 pass catchers from the Colts along with him. And you can include the running backs with Nick Foles. Both Deion Jackson and Zach Moss, I think, can be included. I probably want at least one of those pass catchers that I pair him with to be not a running back, to be a wide receiver or tight end. But I think you can include the running backs in those pairings. But just looking at the tools, we have him exactly neutral in the captain spot, 7.8% ownership, 7.8% chance to be an optimal. He actually is going a little bit under owned in the util, 38% ownership, 40.5% chance of being optimal. He's a quarterback on a 1-game slate. We know that he's capable of putting up a big score. He's 9,000. He's cheaper than, most of the kind of stud options. So I think Nick Foles is somebody that I'm going to play a bit. I'm not really taking a huge stand here. It looks like, the field's getting it about right. That's how I want to play Foles. The bigger thing for me is when I'm playing Foles, I want to make sure if he's in the captain spot, I pair him with at least 2 pass catchers. When he's in the flex, I want to have him with at least 1 pass catcher as well.
So you're always bringing along someone with him, because when you're right, you want to make sure you take advantage of what happens when you are right. You've definitely heard us say that line if you've listened to these shows all year. And look, Foles isn't anywhere near Justin Herbert in terms of total optimal lineup percentages when we run the sims over at Stokastic. 3 out of 4 optimal lineups include Justin Herbert in some form, the flex or the captain. We're not even at a coin flip chance for Nick Foles, but we're still at 46%, and that's still better than everyone else on his team. There are some running backs that are looking like they might, compete with that optimal lineup percentage if you look at our sims. But you said it. It's a quarterback on a 1-game slate, one with uncertainty to the point where we think the field will be tentative to play him, and that makes him viable when you know the floor is there. And sans rushing, I guess he does have a little bit of a ceiling. I certainly think that Zach Moss is the one that our tools are going to make people gravitate towards. We talked about him a little bit already. But look, I think this guy looks really excellent. Obviously still in flux, this backfield, and we don't know what kind of situations he'll find himself in. The expected fantasy points, opportunity value, we have no idea for Moss, but he looks great in our tools. Talk to me about how you're using him tonight.
Yeah, so let me pull up the Zach Moss data for that. Because just looking at how much he was used last week, he looks like a slam dunk at 7,000, and the projection kind of reflects that. So just looking at last week, the first game without Jonathan Taylor, Zach Moss carried it 24 times, including 8 red zone carries. He only had 1 target, but he did run 16 routes, so he was very involved. I guess I was wrong. I said that he had like 8 to 10 targets in the game. His highest total was 6 targets in a game in week 1. Outside of that, he hasn't exceeded 1 target in a game. So not extremely involved in the passing game. Maybe Deion Jackson, the better pass catching option, but having 6 targets for 6 receptions in week 1. Of course, that was when he was still with the Bills. He's shown some pass catching upside at least. But with 24 carries last week, if he's going to get that kind of usage against, the Chargers defense, not great against the run either. They're one of the worst teams in the league against the run, similar to the Vikings that he had last week. So it's, I don't know. I mean, I guess I said that he was capable, but he carried it 24 times. He only had 81 yards on 24 carries. So not an extremely great game for Zach Moss. So maybe that is a point in favor of switching things up and going to Jordan Wilkins. Like maybe, you said you like Jordan Wilkins at 200. Maybe he does have a little bit, he could potentially have a little bit more opportunity because Zach Moss, 24 carries, that's a lot of carries to only get to 81 yards. So maybe that's a point in favor of Jordan Wilkins. But as you said, I think that the most likely scenario is Zach Moss retains the role that he had last week, which is he had 24 carries. I'm not saying he'll get 24 carries again, but he's still probably going to get the bulk of the workload based on what we saw last week. So he projects really well. He's only 7,000. I think Zach Moss, one of the better projected plays on the slate, probably a relatively safe floor. And looking at the tools we haven't projected for, 7.6% captain ownership, 7.1% chance to be an optimal in the captain spot, 31.4% util ownership, 37.4% chance of being optimal in the util. So positive leverage in the util, a little bit of negative leverage in the captain, but fairly.
Now let me pitch this, because we got a super chat from Jillian.
All right. Who
is kind of asking you to compare. Well, first of all, put on your single entry double up, sort of like slightly higher slightly higher upside cash game is really what she's asking. Would you take Jackson or Michael Pittman, just comparing them and then comparing them to their salary-based expectations?
Deion Jackson or Michael Pittman? It's got to be Pittman for me. He's only 600 more expensive. We have Pittman optimal in the util 42.5% of the time. Deion Jackson 18.7% of the time. So I think Deion Jackson makes sense to me more as a tournament player than a cash game player, just because he didn't have nearly the same involvement that Zach Moss had last week. Like, he was clearly used as the RB2. That could change, but I think Pittman is certainly the safer option. That's what you want in a cash game setting. Would you agree with that, Matt?
I would agree with that. I still think Pittman's the better player. I just the uncertainty about Foles' ability to get him involved consistently is what's kind of nagging with me. And look, Taylor's back again with another super chat. Neil says, thank you for the great correlation breakdown on Foles' inability to run and what that means for needing to match him with someone on the receiving side in a game theory optimal situation. I know I'm thankful for that. Taylor's clearly thankful for that. The rest of the crew is. And so how about a way to say thank you to you guys? What if you, having gotten into the Stokastic platinum streets on the NFL side, well, now is a fantastic time to do so, because we are offering 3 free days for new users only. That's important, guys. If you've taken advantage of another deal, unfortunately, this one won't work. But for new users only, you get 3 free days with full access to everything that Stokastic owns and controls over on the NFL side. That includes the projections, the ownership tools, the 1v1 tools, the lineup generator tools, which are adding features by the moment, it feels like. This data and tools team is just going nuts at the end of the year here with these new options. The top stacks tool, the boom bust probability tool that you always hear us bringing out. It's a risk-free offer because it's free $99. I think free is pretty good these days, Neil.
I'd take free any day, especially for these tools. These are the best tools in the business. You can get them for free. I think it's a no-brainer.
I would say no-brainer is an understatement, especially because, you could make enough money to, get your next month of Stokastic plus platinum, get it the big boy way. That's all I'm saying. That's pretty cool. It's pretty solid upside for 3 free days. And if you want to do it on a Thursday so you get more slates, I don't blame you, but Monday's as good a day as ever. And guys, we already blew past 300 likes. I think with 15 minutes left before this slate locks, we could get to 400, Neil. I know we got to talk indie wide receivers and tight ends, and I know they want to hear your takes on kickers and defenses. Do you think we have 400? Could we get 420?
I want 420. I want, that's what Mike was saying. We should shoot for 420. I believe that we should shoot for 420 here. I think that's a realistic goal. I know we're capable.
We are capable. And Jorge back again with a $10 super chat. Thank you, my friend. Happy holidays, Jorge. Your top 2 players for util and top captain for large field GPPs on DK that can give me a win and show off Neil's Twitter. Let's assume that's the real Twitter he's showing off as well.
Okay, so top 2 large field GPP util plays. We're talking strictly. Obviously, like Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler. You want some of these guys in there as well. As I go over my article, generally you're going to have some studs in there. But I assume that when he's talking large field GPP, he means the under-owned plays. I just talked about Deion Jackson as somebody that I would not play in cash. I do actually like him quite a bit for large field GPP, just because I think that he does. As I'm looking at it closer, I do think that he would benefit more from pass catching upside, and Zach Moss, not doing great last week. I think that we could see Deion Jackson come in and have a big game here at relatively muted ownership. So I think that he's a pretty solid large field GPP play. And then I'll also throw in, I'm tempted to just go Jelani Woods and Donald Parham here. I think that those 2 are the guys that really intrigue me. But so I'll go with Jelani Woods and Deion Jackson, with Donald Parham being another guy that I really like, who could have really low ownership.
I'll throw one more in there as well. Alec Pierce, who, again, same argument and same concerns about Michael Pittman. The opportunity value is highly variable, but we're looking at a player who has a respectable 7.5 expected fantasy points per game over the last 6 weeks. At 2,800, that's 7.5 expected fantasy points. That's almost identical to Mike Williams. I'm not saying that they have the same floor and ceiling. I'm just saying that comparing those prices and then looking at the value of each player's opportunity, Pierce looks like a very interesting option to me. But I know you wanted the Showdown Shaman's take on that, so I'll leave it at just 1 for me. Let's dive right into this wide receiver position. Talk to me about Pittman, Pierce, and the rest of these uncertain receivers with Foles now at quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Pittman is just a guy who's going to project really well. He's one of our top projected point per dollar plays on the slate. He is the wide receiver 1 for the Colts. If we assume that BDN can still sling it a little bit, Michael Pittman should benefit. I like him quite a bit as just a player. Everybody's going to like Michael Pittman. You like the nickname BDN? I mean, that's a great.
You just
nickname.
casually dropped it like no one was going to notice.
I mean, everybody knows he's Big Nick. Everybody loves him. Michael Pittman, yeah, he's a great play. He projects really well. After Pittman, yeah, Alec Pierce, I'm with you. I love Alec Pierce here. He's seen 12 targets over the past couple weeks. Hasn't really done much with them, but he's been really involved. He's run routes on at least 89% of passing plays in each of the past 2 weeks, along with 12 targets over that span. He's taken on a bigger role, as you would kind of hope and expect from a rookie receiver. As we've gone throughout the year, he seems to have emerged as the wide receiver 2. Paris Campbell, of course, still running a lot of routes, 80% route participation rate in each of the past 3 games. He's seen 12 total targets over the past 3 games. I prefer Alec Pierce because he is significantly cheaper than Paris Campbell and seeing more targets lately. But I think Paris Campbell is, kind of almost like a pay up to be contrarian relative to Pierce, at least in theory. But then you look at the ownership, and we've only got Pierce at 20% ownership. So yeah, it's got to be my favorite. Pittman favorite as far as like he's the highest projected. Alec Pierce probably my favorite in terms of he's going to have a lot of opportunities, still not projected for a ton of ownership. Paris Campbell kind of just playable, but he's more expensive, and we're projecting for about the same ownership as Alec Pierce. And I think Alec Pierce has been having more opportunities. So I'd say Pierce my second favorite, followed by Campbell, and then Ashton Doolin, a guy that you can consider just as a contrarian option if you're trying to make a lineup where you're playing somebody who's not getting a ton of ownership. He's seen 4 targets over the past 2 weeks, but 2 of them have been in the red zone. I believe one of those was a touchdown that he caught. And I'm not sure if that was within the past 2 weeks, but he's seen 2 red zone targets. So the other receiver you can consider from the Colts.
Great breakdown. I do want to ask you a question about one other player that I don't think you mentioned, but just want to mention longtime community member Vinny C with another bomb of a super chat. Oh man, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year, whatever else he might miss. He says Happy Merry to you and yours. Love our hosts and our members in chat, Discord, LFG. Also, shout out to Jorge, who is a boss. Couldn't agree more. Guys, is this not a great community? Or I don't know what else to say. Like, we're the ones who are lucky. We love talking football. We love helping you guys win money. But this is awesome. We're so happy you're here. We got only 8 minutes to lock, so I'm blasting through these super chats fast. Here, Vince, 1979 Gator with another $5 says, Merry Christmas. He wants a last man in for his flex position. Foles or Pittman? Those don't really feel like last man in, but who do you prefer considering their salary-based expectations?
I mean, it really depends on the rest of your lineup. Again, Nick Foles, you want to have at least one pass catcher from the Colts if you're throwing them in there. So if you have, just one pass catcher or if you have a couple pass catchers from the Colts already in your lineup, it's definitely Nick Foles. If you have one or fewer, then maybe I'd consider Michael Pittman. It's really close. I mean, these two are projected for about the same ownership. They have about the same odds of being optimal. I think I'm going to go... Man, it's really tough. Pittman has slightly lower ownership, slightly higher optimal odds. So I guess I'll go with Pittman unless you already have a couple Colts pass catchers in there.
Pittman for me. I'll keep it at that. Let's talk about some of these lower probability options. Ashton Doolin, he's tough because Pierce is just $200 more on DraftKings. So with a projection nearly 5 fantasy points higher, unless you're making some changes to our to the optimizer yourself, you're not going to get a whole lot of Ashton Doolin. Break down Doolin and compare him to some of these lower projected tight ends like Mo Alley Cox, who could see, a decent amount of opportunity as just $200. We mentioned Jelani Woods, who's the more expensive one, the highest projected of the tight ends. These all feel like dart throws. These feel like the last man in options. Break down Woods, Mo Alley Cox, and then also throw in Ashton Doolin, that last ditch wide receiver for Foles.
Yeah, so I think that Doolin is probably the thinnest of these plays. I still like Doolin just because, as I said, 4 targets with 2 red zone targets over the past 2 weeks. I think that he's viable, but I think that I feel a little bit better about some of these other options. I prefer, I mean, we talked about Alec Pierce. He's obviously getting a lot more ownership, 20% ownership to Doolin's 4.6. So that's what I like about Ashton Doolin is the 4.6% ownership makes him playable. But as you said, Pierce, even at 20% ownership seems reasonable. And then these tight ends, I think, are just have higher. I don't know if I could say higher floors necessarily, higher likelihood of hitting at least like 5 fantasy points. I would say is Jelani Woods. I think I like better than Doolin. I think I like Mo Alley Cox better. He's just 200 and he projects, for 4 fantasy points and clearly has the ability to spike an upside, get in the end zone. So I think I prefer Jelani Woods, Mo Alley Cox, Donald Parham. But I still do think that Doolin is somebody that you can consider playing, in like a 150 set. If you're playing 150, you probably should have a few Doolin shares in there. He's probably not somebody that I'd necessarily get to in like 20 lineups.
That makes all the sense to me. If I'm just looking straight up at the optimal lineup percentage, whether they're in the flex or the captain spot, obviously at the captain spot, we're reserving these players for the largest of large field tournaments. But Mo Alley Cox is in the optimal lineup nearly 10% of the time in our tools, and just below him at 7.7%, Jelani Woods, Ashton Doolin down there with less than 1% chance. So that is a significant difference when we're talking about these 3 dart throw players. Do want to move over to the kickers and defenses because we only have 4 minutes left. We'll do a slightly abbreviated final super chat from Jillian. Everett or Woods in a small field tournament? Just a quick answer.
Everett or Woods in a small field tournament? Probably Everett.
I think so too. That's where our tools would point you. Yep. We move on to the final 4, the kickers, the defenses. As we almost always say, these are definitely viable options. I think the Chargers defense in particular, you have to say that their chances of extra turnovers, touchdown upside, hard to predict, but slightly higher when you got a backup coming in, even if it is Nick Foles.
Yeah, absolutely. Always helps to get the backup quarterback in there for the defense. So honestly, they all look pretty viable. I'm just looking at the kickers in terms of leverage. Some of the better plays on the slate playing one of these kickers at captain. We have Cameron Dicker at 2.1% captain ownership with a 4.1% chance of being optimal at captain. That's pretty nice for Cameron Dicker. And then Chase McLaughlin, similar, 1.6% projected ownership at captain, 3.2% chance of being optimal. These are some of the better leverage plays on the entire slate. I prefer Dicker of the 2 kickers just because he's got, I would say, the higher floor being on the better offense. And he's, we actually have negative leverage in the util, or no, we have very neutral leverage in the util on Chase McLaughlin, 16.8% ownership, 16.9% chance of being optimal. Dicker, we have optimal 21.4% of the time at 19.6% ownership, but kind of splitting hairs. I think both of these kickers, very viable. Ownership
could be a sloppy game for sure.
Could be a sloppy game. They're both projected for not a ton of ownership, so like them quite a bit. As you said, the Chargers defense, the Colts bringing in a backup quarterback, that helps a bit. So Chargers defense certainly in play at 4,600. Colts defense, I mean, they're in play. What's the price tag on the Colts defense? I'm trying to find them here.
They're 3,400 on DraftKings, and they're positively leveraged. Yeah, tools keeping me honest. Yeah.
2.1% projected ownership at the captain spot, 2.5% chance of being optimal. Maybe I need to refresh because so in the util, I'm seeing negative leverage on the Colts, but still the price is right on the Colts. We've got a project for 13.4% util ownership, 11.9% chance of being optimal, but still positive leverage in the captain spot. And at 3,400, I mean, it's not going to take much to pay off that price tag. Obviously they can get into they can lose a lot of points quickly by giving up points to this Chargers offense, but still they, interceptions, a lot of ways to pick up some fantasy points, and at 3,400 those points all matter. So yeah, as always, the kickers, defenses, all viable here, and generally the kickers I think are a little bit better here, but the defense is viable as well.
Maybe we just you start your lineup with the eggplant emoji lineup. You start with Dicker and then BDN at quarterback, and then you just figure it out from there. That's the very basic data and science that we typically use to build our lineups. Yeah, actually, exactly that is a viable way. But it's just
did you say Woods? We got to throw Woods in there.
Woods,
Mo Alley Cox.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is Cox, the week for Woods, that. Mo Alley Cox in that lineup as well.
Dicker the kicker. Yep, we got a lot of great. There's a great way to build some penis lineups here.
Follow him at PlayerQ DFS. And you know what I also realized? Producer Mike behind the glass at Awesome Yo is quietly the one who a couple years ago asked Jason Kelsey that question that went viral in the media room about BDN. So yeah, let's just roll with that. You know the man, the myth, the legend. Follow Mike as well at Awesome Yo. Thanks to all your work behind the virtual glass today. You can follow me at absolutely do that. So you can check it out over there.
At Awesome Yo.
At Awesome Yo. Follow me at Draftaholic. It's much appreciated as well. I'm Matt Savoca. Oh man, what a fun chat this was. What a fun game this should be. I hope this shoots out. Neil, any final words of encouragement for the people before we get out of here?
Yeah, I mean, this is very exciting. The final game for moving on for best ball for season long. And then of course, for DFS, this will be a really fun game. Good luck tonight.
Good luck to you all. For Mike and Neil, I'm Matt. Let's win some money.